conclusions. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with a fresh 3D Studio. Let's see here. Oh, fun. Okay. So again, some of these things are going to seem kind of trivial, and perhaps they are. We can investigate that. But in every instance, I can point to at least one or two projects that someone's actually built that have involved these. And so I do think they've been relevant to somebody, and they're still form-making processes. And so with that, we're going to talk about simulating cloth. And this is, again, this is kind of flaky, but we might be able to think of some interesting things to do with it. So cloth can be lots of things, actually, but most of the time it's a plane, or it's a planar shape. So we have a cross section of something that we made, and we're going to apply two kinds of physics to it. One, we just apply like a force, like wind, right? We have a flag, we apply wind to it. It kind of, it makes a shape in the wind. The speed of the wind and the tension of the cloth are going to create like different kinds of effects. The other kind of force we apply to it is a physical body. So like if we drop a tablecloth on a table and there's like an apple on it, it's going to like conform roughly to the shape of the apple, but it's going to distort also. And by adjusting the size of the shape that it interacts with, the ductility of that cloth, we can affect that like shape, and we get some very organic shapes. In architecture, we can do different things. Like, let's imagine that you were trying to make a canopy for something, right? You could put different shapes under it to represent either literal shapes that you want to map that surface to, or program shapes that you want to accommodate that are just kind of abstract, right? So like a really big like disc might be kind of like an A-frame area, and a smaller like an apple, let's say, right, might be like a bathroom or something, and then that whole thing becomes a canopy once it's been stretched. You could stretch it like a pair of pantyhose, and you get a very stretchy, like silky, distortion. You could stretch it like flannel, and you get a little bit of distortion, but it's still very rigid. So we have lots of variables, right? We have the variables of the physics, we have the variables of the objects, and with that we can begin to create some forms. So we're going to use our plane as our cloth, and as I've talked about over and over again the last like two classes, we usually need more information when you want to deform something, right? If we deformed this right now, it's going to be pretty lame, right? Like the best, we're going to get these little spikes in something. And okay, like maybe you want that, but I don't think that's very clothy, very cloth-like. It's not an adjective. So I'm going to go ahead and do 32 segments in my cloth. There's a limit though, guys, right? And so this is, and planes get used for this so often that it's built into the tool. It'll tell you how many faces that you actually make when you do that, which is really nice. And I would stay around this number depending upon what you're making. Right, the more geometry that you have, the slower the program is going to get, the slower the physics calculations are going to be. Only take what you need. Okay? So that's our cloth. And then for now, I'm gonna make a box, I guess. I don't have to. I can do any object I want. So there's our a box, and the geometry doesn't really matter. It just has to be an intersection with the other geometry. And I'm gonna put my cloth over the box, like I'm like a magician, and I'm gonna drop this on top of it. Okay. I'm gonna turn off any gewgaws though. Like I'm gonna turn off shadows. I'm going to turn off ambient occlusion. These are going to be processor intensive, and so I don't want any like eye candy. This is going to be plenty eye candy. Okay, click on the cloth. I'm going to plane, add a cloth modifier to it, and this is you got to watch this here. So you go to Object Properties, and I'm going to add objects. I'm going to add the box. So now in my simulation, I have the box and the cloth. The box is part of the cloth simulation. It's a collision object, right? I'm going to collide with it. I don't need to do anything else. And then the plane is cloth, and it's cloth. And you can go through here and you can change the settings to different things. guys, like, I don't really know what these really mean, but they just apply different friction parameters and settings. Experiment with them. Like, I really can't tell you, like, exactly what they're going to get. I would assume that spandex is stretchier than, like, wet cloth. Silk might be stretchier yet. I don't know. But let's just go for default. And that's it. Like, once you've got that, you click OK. The other thing that I want to do that I haven't talked about yet is to add a space warp. Yes, that's awesome sounding. Space warp. I'm going to make gravity. Don't worry about the size of it. Gravity's everywhere. But you put it in the simulation, right? There's gravity. You can affect the force of the gravity, whether it operates spherically or not. Planar's fine. It's pointing down. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and once I've got gravity in the simulation, go back to my cloth object. Go into the object. Go to cloth forces, and I'm going to add gravity. Now I'm ready to simulate. And one way to do this is just to say local. This is going to run the simulation in near real time. If I click on that, oh, it's so slow. Okay, stuff is happening, I assure you. It just might not be happening fast enough. All right, hang on a minute. Let's see here. Cloth, object properties. Maybe I do want to do spandex. Let's see what we get here. You can see it kind of starting to do something here. It's just really slow. You can see down there it's actually like running the calculations here. I think I started it a bit too high. I have a lot of faces on this thing, so it's doing a lot of crunching as it's looking for intersections. It's going to start to stretch it. It is going through. Lame. Oh. Okay. It says inactive. Okay, that's no good. Collision object. I don't know what happened there. I blame the internet. Okay. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to go to my plane object and reduce some of the resolution. I don't need to be that precise. Oh, you know what, too, guys? Oh, geez. Yeah, this thing is huge. Okay, I really messed this up here. That's why it's simulating like a football field. Scale is important. Okay. Let's try this again here. Oh my gosh. I'm going to use my transform type in to quickly recenter these things. One thing that's really nice is the select by name box here. You can, if you're looking for an object, you can just open that list up, and that gives you a really, oh my gosh, look how far away that thing is. Oh my god. Really good way to find an object that you might have lost in the in that setup here. Okay, so let's make it a little bit bigger. Live a little. Okay, go back to cloth modifier, and oh wait, let me add the modifier now. I think I started the simulation. Yeah, so let's go cloth, add objects, box, collision object, cloth forces, gravity. Okay. Something's not right. Okay. Plane is cloth. Something keeps changing my settings. Okay, collision object. Maybe you need to apply the forces first. Oh, there we go. That was dramatic. Let's take it back here. You can reset the state of it. I'm going to dampen it a bit. If I go into the properties here for my plane, let's do, I think flannel's pretty slow. It's still pretty. So one thing is that the box participates in the simulation, but you can hide it later, and so you can preserve like what has kind of happened to it, but without actually worrying about that box being there. I mean, that's actually what you're going to be looking at. Let's go back to the initial state, so you can see that a little bit better there.
Why does it do this in simulation?
Because it's just running. It's just not calculating properly anymore. Like it's exceeded its own limits. There's all kinds of settings here, guys. You can look for self collisions. You can have it tear the cloth as it goes. Let me take a step back and show you some other stuff here. It's kind of like over simulating. It's very possible. I'm going to add another object or two. Yeah, the gravity is just under space warps here. Gravity. It's under forces, space warps, under create. And it just goes anywhere. You just kind of click and drag it. Let me run that sim again and see if I can get a better result for you. So I've got and these are like right now just kind of hanging there in space. They're not really doing much of anything. Okay, so if I go back, I'm going to add these to the simulation again. And they're going to be part of the simulation. I'm sorry, they're collision objects. Plane is still, yep. Okay, it's all good. Let's go back and run it again, see what we get. I'm going to reset the sim. It's not keeping those in there. Huh. Maybe I need to do the forces again. See, it just does these things as like inactive again. Okay, so collision, collision, cloth, collision. There we go. Got some stuff there. If you increase the scale of your cloth and increase the number of segments, you can probably get different effects. There's a couple other things that you can do. I'm going to go back in my plane here. Some things you might want to do with this that you probably would ask about. If you go into group, let's actually reset the simulation here. If you go into group under cloth, you can pick vertices on the cloth, and you can fix them. So you click those and you say make group, and then you can say preserve, and then if you go in and you run your cloth simulation again, those points should stay fixed, and in fact they're a little bit too fixed and nothing's happening. Okay. If I go into my cloth object, let's make something silk, I guess. You need a springier fabric, or perhaps more gravity. I don't know. But see, I fixed the edges of it though. See if that does anything. I might have reset the simulation and doing all that. And it's collision, cloth. Yeah, okay. Objects can have different frictions. There we go. Oh, it's getting there. See, it's kind of weird because you can actually like move the object in real time, and you can kind of get some things. But you can see how the edges are fixed. Right? It's not. It's kind of more sort of like a trampoline now than it was. And for some reason, I'm not getting the kind of droop that I'd hoped. But you can experiment with that, though. So I'll show you another. Do you guys want to play with that for a second? And then I'll show you the flag one. Or you guys want to move on? Who wants to keep playing? It does. It's not very accurate. It's going out of like control.
For mine, at least, it wasn't saving the properties of silk every time I come back.
Yeah. Well, it actually just sets the properties. It doesn't save them in silk, but the numbers have changed, but it doesn't. It doesn't stay in that little window.
And until it go back to the flat thing.
To reset it, just go to reset state. When you're on that page, reset it. And guys, you gotta play with it. But I was having better luck with it in my office this morning, like when I was working on this. Play with different settings for the initial plane. If you increase the accuracy of it, you get less of that sort of where it's inside of the object because it's running more calculations. Okay, it's not intended to be. Oh, that's really nice. Check out that one where the code is there. So that's kind of what I was thinking. You get it working right. You can get kind of a canopy. Now, put yourself in that thing. Put a camera underneath that. Put like some columns under there, and that's a whole canopy. Right? You just freeze that object, and now you've got this really nice like freeform kind of shape. There you go. Yeah. So you play with the scale of that, and you've got like a fabric, like a tensile fabric piece, and it's physically calculated. If you're really careful, I bet it would probably be pretty close to, something you could build within a safety factor.
Where'd you add gravity?
The gravity's under, if you go to create and you go to space warps and you go to forces and gravity. I don't know, mine's not working quite so hot at the moment, but actually I think I just locked it up too. Yes, teapots. Okay, so I'm gonna do something else now. You guys can keep playing on. I'm just gonna set this one up. You guys don't have to do this one. So I'm going to make a group and preserve the edges again, so that's going to give me a tight piece. I can make a wind space warp, and the direction of this one is actually important. The direction of the gravity one, not so much, because gravity points down most of the time, unless you're in a space shuttle or something like that. Most of the stuff you'll design for. Wind has a strength. And then if you go into your cloth modifier, you can add that wind as a force and make this cloth. And we'll make it. Flags are made out of polyester. Let's do that. Cool. Captain America building. And that'll run. I mean, that's continuously running. So, like, as it's being, like, because I'm doing, like, the simulate local, nothing is being saved to the system. It's just continuously running. So, again, it started off flat, and it got pushed by the wind, and then that got pushed by the wind, and then that got pushed by the wind. This thing will run until my processor melts. Okay? Now, could you take this and then put something in its way and then freeze that form, right? Take Chungy, try to make an awesome like facade out of it, right? So what I did was, it's a piece of cloth, and I fixed these, made them in a group. I have a wind space warp as my force, and that's like absolutely all that is. You can add different kinds of like collision objects. You could apply different like vectors of wind to simulate the wind on your site, or some other kind of force, things of change, or like whatever, right? You freeze that, and you're gonna get that mesh. If you stop that simulation. You can animate this. There's actually tools at the bottom for saving these keyframes. It'll actually freeze. This is a mesh that's being morphed, basically, right, from frame to frame. It'll freeze all of those frames, like one by one. You'll have like 100 morphed frames. So that's all built on itself. But it's a simulation, right? It's actually simulating these as if they're springs that are all like connected to each other. And the properties of those springs are determined by the materials that you select. So this is on the video, guys. I sort of annotated it when I did it. You can follow along if you want, but that's a flag form. You can have all kinds of these things interacting with it. In fact, the cover of an architectural journal is a cloth simulation that was like frozen mid wave. It's like a flag, and then they just apply the lattice modifier to it. It's kind of sexy though, because you get those kind of like rivulets in it, and it's kind of folded a bit. Like it's organic. So if you found a really good place for it, you would go in and you could say like convert to mesh. Now it's a mesh. And if I'm being flippant, now it's a building, right? Shouldn't be. But oh, if you go into the cloth, if you go into the plane, here, let me do it again. Here. So we'll just say we have the plane and we have a cloth modifier. Open up cloth, go to group, make a selection somewhere. So I can even fix like one point, like I'm hanging it on a hook. I go make group, and then I say preserve, and then that point will never move from where it is in space. Okay. You can do 4 point, you can each corner, you could freeze the middle and let the rest of it droop, whatever you guys want to do. But if I take that form and I decide at one point, to freeze it, I can get that kind of mesh. And what's nice about it is that for the most part, it's not self-intersecting. Again, it's a continuous like wave that's being applied through the material. It's very graceful, right? Who's to say that I can't take that object that I took and then rotate it and do something else with it, right? And that's the lattice, so it's not going to get much better than that, but go back to the mesh. Pretty good. Some of it's kind of wonky up in the corner here, but that happens. So anyway, cloth modifier can be interesting. Do we have any questions on the modifier? On the simulation? You guys ready for particles? Right, we got two more topics: particles, and then physics simulations, which are really cool. Okay, particles. Particles are found under the Create tab. You're going to find them under Particle Systems. I can't possibly go through all these. Hey, Richard. Yes. They are different kinds. I recommend you try them all. My favorite two are Super Spray, because it has more options than spray, and it's literally like a hose of particles that I can like point at things and I can spray them with particles. P-Cloud, which is what I'm actually going to start with, which is just a cloud of particles. And so I make a box, and then that box is inhabited by particles. I can also take any shape I want that's enclosed, and I can make it a particle emitter. So you can take like your extrusion or your metal ball form or something like that and have it seed particles. But right now I'm just going to do a box emitter. And there are different kinds of particles. Like right now it's creating, well, I'll go to mesh here. Particles can bog down your system, and so there's all kinds of different options for displaying them. You can do ticks or dots, and that just represents where they are. It doesn't represent what they'll look like. Mesh represents what they are. Okay. You can represent them as, you know, cubes, if you're pixel happy. Tetrahedrons. Spheres, if you have lots of RAM. You can also change the particle type to metaparticles, guys, so you can actually do liquids as a cloud. We'll talk about that in a second here. But let's do standard particles, and we'll do cubes, and we'll do... So then they can do a viewport display, and you can tell the display to actually preview more or less particles, because if you have like millions of particles, maybe you only want the general gist of what's happening on the screen at the same at once. So you say, I only want to see 50% of the particles. Well, let's do 100 because I do have a fast machine, and that'll work for now. First tab is particle generation. You can have it generate like 10 particles per frame, or 100 particles per frame, or you can say make 100 particles and distribute them throughout the 100 frames, or start with 100 and whatever. So by rate or by total, particles can have speed because they're being emitted. You have to give them a timing, so they start emitting at 0 and they might stop emitting at 100, which is useful if you're going to be emitting by rate. So if I go here, see more particles keep getting emitted, keep getting emitted, keep getting emitted. Okay, they don't have any speed right now, so they're not going anywhere. Now they are. Crazy, right? So animation of particles. So they start emitting. You can also give them a lifespan. So I can go in and I can say that they live 100 frames. I could say that they live 20 frames. So 10 get emitted, and then every 20 seconds they die. So there's just a constant like pig pen kind of thing. But the number is fairly constant. New ones are constantly being born, but new ones are constantly fading. Okay. You can also like vary them. You can have some of them live a little bit longer, some of them don't. You can vary, when they emit. So there's all kinds of controls, guys. If I have 0 speed though, they stay in a cloud. So I have a constant, like just pixely cloud. Pretty cool. I'm going to play with these settings a little bit. Now that's like, and there's a seed. I can change the random seed if I want to. Check this out. If I go to metaparticles, and I increase the size of them. Oh wait, this is gonna hurt. You can get a ever-changing amorphous blob of metaparticles. That's gonna slow me down there. But from frame to frame, it's gonna congeal together. So you can take the blob thing, and now this thing will generate blobs for you, which could be really interesting for simulating fluids. Well, let's not do that though. Oh, you can change the size of them. You can have a size, and you can have a variance of size. So you can have randomly sized particles. Kind of cool. Think of how hard this would be to do in Grasshopper to give all these like random variables and instance them and like all that stuff like that. This is like trivial. You can have them grow. Okay. So I've got a bunch of particles. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna make a box. That's a funky view. And I'm gonna rotate the box a little bit to create kind of a wedge. And then I'm going to take some wind again. And I'm going to rotate it. Never get that right in the first try. Okay, I've got wind, I got particles. In order to get anything to behave in response to a space warp, you have to link it to it. So you go up here to link or bind, and I'm going to bind this. I'm going to hold and click and drag it. Oops. Drag it to this, and now they're now. Whoa. So they've been bound to each other. You can bind. There's all these different space warps. Like P-bomb will explode your particles. Gravity will make your particles fall. There's other kinds of things, right? But wind in this case is right. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in under space warps and I'm going to do deflector. And I'm going to do a U deflector, which is an object-based. I just make a deflector, And I'm going to pick my object, and my object is this box. Now I've made a deflector. Nothing's happening. That's because this is a space warp, and I need to associate it again with my deflector. Check that out. Splat. So now I've got wind, and it's like hitting that thing, and it's like spraying off of it. Okay. Okay, so you're like, okay, Nick, that is really refreshing. I don't know, it's like a Sprite commercial or something, right? But what do we do with this? What do we do with this architecturally? Well, one idea is you have different parameters, so the things can bounce off of it. They can have friction applied to it, and if I had 0 bounce and I have maximum friction, I got maximum stiction. And so now I can essentially, it's like I'm taking foam and I'm spraying it at the edge of this building, right? And I can get this form, and I can move these particles up a little bit. And this is all, I love how it's all real time though. And so I can get some of these things, and now some of them are dying and some of them aren't. So I could change some of that. If I go in and I go back to these particles and I make them into meta particles somewhere. Where am I at here? Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Box emitter, dots, particle size, metaparticles. And I go up to here. And if I change the size of my particles, so they're sticking to this thing, and they're metaparticles, and they are relatively big. I've got like a blob that's going to stick to my building at some point, and then I can freeze that, and I can erase the other stuff, right? I don't need that stuff, and I can get a form, based on that volume. I think I made these a little bit big, but it looks like snot or something. It's terrible. Let's do 15. Okay, so if I go here, and the crazy thing about this is that it's just flowing out of this thing, and so I play with the parameters, I play with the number of particles, I play with it. I mean, you might not like that. It might not like fluid, but there's something about maybe the boxes, like you have like sugar cubes that stick to it. These are a little big actually. But anyway, you can play with those parameters and assign whatever narrative that you want to them. Like you have multiple kinds of emitters, you have a form that they're like bouncing off of. You can apply whatever kind of forces that you want to them. But this has wind and this has this like deflector, and it can be pretty interesting when you get that far. Yeah. So here's kind of like a sugar cube form that's based on that building. And there's all kinds of stuff that we can do with it. And we can animate that process, and we can snapshot it, and we can present it to our professors. We'll make you do it over again. Anyway, so that particles are really interesting. Like you can there are all kinds of space warps and different particle types. Let me quick show you one more kind of particle thing, just because it's interesting. So you can do super spray, and these are useful for spraying particles, but also if you would like to create like a fountain in your project, you can create one of these things. And oops. Oh, terrible at this. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Oh, okay. Trying to get to go upright, and it's not doing it. Let's see. Let's do front view, super spray. Nope. If I do a left view? No. Okay. Anyway, the arrow is the direction of the spray. If you don't get it right, you can always rotate it. There we go. Okay. So I got super spray. Super spray emits particles Wow, it's not letting me zoom out. Sorry, guys. Oh, I see. Because okay, the emitter is the size of the emitter can be any size, and I think I made it. Oh my god, I made it enormous. Okay, that's why. The scale of these things can be anything. Okay, so I got my emitter. If you apply gravity to them, and again, don't forget to link your space warp as you guys play. So link this to that. So they spray up and they fall down. I think you guys can kind of see that. And then if you go into super spray and you play with the spread, like the axial spread and the plane spread, let's say 90 degrees in both directions. And you play with the amounts. Yep, start emitting, stop emitting. Okay, and you play with the speed. Lots of settings here. I'm really going to mess this up here, but the more, so you can have this kind of a spray, and if you get it right, you can get it to arc like a fountain. Like you give them enough like velocity so that gravity picks them up and like puts so they escape and then they come back down again. I need to we have to adjust some of this, but that's the idea though. So anyway, you can do that, and that's how you can make fountains and things. And you could trace the arcs of them, and you could use them to generate curves for things. There's all kinds of things you can do with super spray. Okay, one last thing. Last but not least. Why don't you guys play for a little bit? I think you are already, and then I'll make you a final demonstration for the grand finale today. Oh yeah. I think it has to go faster though. Okay. Good. Reset the thing though. There's the thing. Ah. Sweet. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't, yeah, I didn't make them touch each other. I probably should have. I'm new to all this, guys. I don't know. I'm just kidding. We'll talk about it. Do you guys want to talk about this, or do you want to play for a bit? We only got like 5 minutes, so I guess I have to. Like, I'm inclined to talk about this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna reset. I'm gonna reset all this, and I'm just gonna show you guys like what I did. So I made this is a great like way to finish off the day. I made a row of bricks, like a brick wall, and this is what happened, guys. Like, they're not touching each other, so like if I snap them together, they probably wouldn't like fall when I start the simulation. But I wanted to show you like what's happening, right? They're actually interacting like with each other, as though they were real, right? They actually know like where they are physically. They have a little bit of weight attached to them. It's fine. I made like a rocket sled. I made this little cone, and I animated it. I just took one keyframe and I started at 0, and then I moved it to 30, right? And it crosses the finish line basically. And I chose the cone because I wanted to spray these things like everywhere. All right, so I do that, and I go in and I right click. I go into my Mass FX toolbar, and that comes up. I have to launch. This is my toggle. This launches the Mass FX tools. I can kind of dock it over here somewhere. Yeah, it just sticks there. Okay. You can check ground collisions. So it gives you like an infinite ground plane if you do that, which is great. So I don't have to make a plane to interact with. Then I go in my simulation and I choose my cone, and I want to make that a kinematic rigid body. That means it's going to be like hurled at something. Okay. Dynamic rigid body means I'm probably just going to like let it drop. Kinematic means it's like a pinball. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I want you to calculate like everything. Okay. Static rigid body means it's not going to move at all, but I do want it to participate in the simulation. So like the ground or a box you're going to bounce off of or like whatever is a rigid body. Everything has to be set as a body in the simulation or it's not going to do anything. So we have a kinematic body. I select all these guys, and they are kinematic bodies because they're going to go everywhere. Right? Everything's going to touch everything. And basically once you do that, guys, you got these little, if you go into the tools here, you just start the simulation. So it's gonna run, okay? And when you you can't play it back and forth like you would normally unless you like bake it, okay? In fact, it's still running. Shame on me. Okay, you can reset it. Now you see what happens when I first start them. So they kind of fall over each other, like because they're not quite like attached, and then it finally like piles into them. Okay. If I did a better job of assembling that wall, they'd probably hold together. But you can reset it. It's going to be different every single time, like slightly different. I promise you. It's just the way it is. What could you do with that? Like all kinds of things. I mean, you could create some kind of container to hold various things, and then just like chuck them in there and let them like careen around a few times. Freeze that, and that could give you like a form for something like that. If you have balls, I mean, these things are going to have friction, and the geometry matters. So a ball is going to move around more than a box would, right? The cone makes a difference because it actually sprays them in different like directions. I know it's a little silly, right? But there's definitely things that you can do with this just as formal like generators. Okay, I think we talked about this in comp methods. we've got people like John Cage and other artists who are obsessed with like chance operations, like rolling dice or like the I Ching. This is another kind of chance operation, or it could be, but you can influence, you know, each of the sizes of those blocks, like what speed the thing is falling, where it's coming from, right? And that could give you, you know, some idea for like a building. Could you use it as an out and out simulation? Like, I wouldn't trust it. Like, I wouldn't do like a load calculation or like a seismo calculation or anything like that. But could you diagram like what's going to happen to something? Yeah, certainly, right? It'd be very quick to set up. So experiment with all this stuff. I'm gonna post some stuff up later tonight. I'm gonna be in my office doing some book scans. I'm gonna give you guys some projects that utilize some of these ideas. And I don't need you to replicate the project, but I want you to just try to replicate the method. Like using all the stuff that we've like talked about today, it's all fair game. Try to replicate the like method using a different shape or even using a similar shape. That's fine. But I just want you guys to kind of get like loose and get some practice with all this stuff. If you have questions about something that you want to do, especially for studio, let me know. I'll definitely talk about it with you. But that's it. I'm going to post these videos, and then later on tonight I will post the instructions for the assignment. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you.